Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. I wanted to talk a bit today about archery versus firearms for the purpose of SHTF, WROL, grid down, self-sufficiency, whatever you want to call it. Now, I borrowed a few of these items from various friends of mine today in order to illustrate a point. And just so you know that the shotgun is unloaded, it's been checked, it was just cleaned, so I can guarantee that it is unloaded. And I'm not going to be handling it really for the purpose of this demonstration too much. So I'm going to get right into it here. Now, I have here a recurve bow, which has been strung. Some arrows for that recurve bow with broadheads. We have, of course, the almighty Maverick 88, the cheapest shotgun a person can get. I have some crossbow bolts with broadhead tips and an Excalibur crossbow. So, what are the benefits, pros, and cons of each of these? Well, I've thought of it long and hard. I've done a bit of research. So I'm just going to quickly jump right into the benefits of archery. Now, the number one benefit of archery, I would have to say, is the element of stealth. With a large caliber weapon, it's very difficult to totally silence, if not impossible, to completely silence the shot. Now, that's one area where archery excels, and don't worry, I know what you're thinking. There's not as much power. I'm going to get into the cons in a bit, so just save your breath. Don't get all butthurt. So, in terms of stealth, so you're hunting without drawing attention to yourself. This can be critical in the instance of a WROL. If we live in a lawless society where, perhaps for whatever reason you need to get food, but you don't want to be drawing attention to yourself, hunting with a 308 might not be the best idea. Even the crossbow can be loud. Not that loud if you have, a string suppressor like this here, but it would still be loud enough that you could hear it, on a calm day, calm evening, dusk, dawn, whatever, when you might be hunting. You would probably hear it from 100 yards, under the right conditions. Probably more than that, actually. A lot more than that. So the element of stealth. So even when on the offensive, if for whatever reason, if push came to shove and you needed to go on the offensive for some reason, somebody had, driven you out of your home, or you had to go and rescue somebody or something to that effect, and you were like a really good shot, for the purpose of tactical applications, the bow also is quieter, and although any living thing that you kill with it would take a while to bleed out, which would likely signal if they were in the proximity of other people, if they would be able to signal those other people that you were in the vicinity. So it's kind of a trade-off there, but nonetheless, stealth all around, and heaven forbid you ever had to use these for the purpose of self-defense. And that's, of course, the only reason why you would ever use these in the tactical context. Typically, we're just talking about hunting and or target shooting. Now, one of the other benefits of arrows, of course, is reusable ammunition. So even if you didn't have the means to make arrows, so long as you had, 12 even, if you treated them well and you weren't target shooting into any hard targets that might damage the shaft of the arrow, then chances are it should be okay. You should be able to reuse those over and over again, possibly dozens of times before it cracks. Fortunately, once a carbon fiber arrow cracks, it's pretty much useless. And I'm going to talk a bit more about the basics of archery in the next video I do on this topic. Now, one good thing about the recurve bows and the lower poundage bows, this is a 50-pound recurve bow. That means it takes 50 pounds of force to draw it back. And the benefit of those is that you don't necessarily need carbon fiber or aluminum arrows. Now, it's recommended that you do, but you can technically use, wooden arrow shafts up to around 45-50 pounds, and you might not want to go like full draw overkill, because what can happen is the arrow can break, because the arrow, something called the archer's paradox, which I'll talk about next time too, and the arrow has to actually bend around the rest, the riser, in order to get to its destination, and that happens, in milliseconds. So that's one thing to consider, that you would actually, with this recurve bow, you could make new bows for it. Now, with the crossbow, you would need either a really, I don't know if I would trust wooden bow shooting out of a crossbow, just because it's probably quite powerful. Even though there is no archer's paradox with the crossbow, it's still, you still want a very tough material for that, because 305 feet per second, or compared to about 170 feet per second, depending on the draw length and stuff like that, you're going to need a tougher material to bear the weight of that stress. So something to consider, but you can make ammunition. That's the point I'm trying to communicate. Another good thing about archery in Canada is that you don't need a firearms license for either a recurve bow or a crossbow. You can go right into any sort of hunting store and get yourself a top-of-the-line compound bow or crossbow or recurve bow, and with no questions asked. I don't have a compound bow here, and personally I wouldn't want a compound bow in the instance of a WRL, grids never coming back, self-sufficiency purpose, because for the simple fact that there's so many moving parts and there's so many things that can go wrong. For this recurve bow, you can make your own bowstring out of fishing line, and I'm going to do a video on that at some point as well. So with a compound bow, there's all sorts of pulleys, and it's just very complicated. And to make your own string for a compound bow, I'm sure it can be done, but the strings themselves are quite abstract. So I'm not an expert on that. Maybe you can, I'm sure with the right tools you could. Nonetheless, it'd be far more complicated, and you could achieve the same results with a recurve crossbow. Now, the difference between a recurve and compound, there's recurve bows and there's recurve crossbows, and there's compound bows and compound crossbows. And essentially, a compound bow is faster, it's easier to load, and once you've passed sort of the fulcrum of the pulling back the weight, with a recurve bow you're constantly under 50 pounds of tension. With a compound bow, however, you're once you get past a set point, the tension leaks off and you can just sort of hold it while you focus solely on your aim. So it's a bit easier to aim, it's a bit more accurate. Nonetheless, more moving parts. Once it breaks, you're fucked. One other benefit to archery over firearms is that there's less restrictions on where you can shoot. So if you have a big backyard, good luck shooting off your gun in your backyard, target shooting. You're going to have the SWAT team kicking down your door pretty darn soon. However, if you have a recurve bow or even a crossbow, in a lot of instances, not many people are going to care, so long as, there's a safe backdrop behind it, and you're being very cautious and very competent with what you're doing. And of course, maybe don't be doing it while your neighbors are having a picnic or something like that. Just common sense stuff, but there is less restrictions on where you can shoot. It is considered a firearm, however, by the RCMP. Nonetheless, it's because of its stealth, you can, shoot it in yards. And I've actually consulted with municipal authorities about where you can shoot a recurve, and they're fine with you doing it in your backyard. In my municipality, I don't know what the laws are in yours, I'm just saying in mine, so you might want to look into that. Another great thing about bows is that you can make them. You can make all sorts of bows. You can make sling bows, you can make PVC pipe bows, you can make bows of wood, you can make bows of bundles of sticks, you can make crossbows. I mean, there's so many different things you can make. So when you're talking about projectile weapons like bows, they're a lot more closer to, a more primitive weapons. So they're easier to engineer with, less technology. So that's going to be something of benefit. And if you could get trained on one, so you know what to expect and you know how it feels before the grid goes down, then that would be excellent for you. Another great thing about bows is that you can pretty much kill the largest game in Canada with a bow, a crossbow, or a compound bow. Now, the same can't be said for all weapons. For instance, a 22, I know some people would say, well, under the right circumstances, with a perfectly placed shot, you could kill a moose with a 22. But the fact is, very few people would ever be able to do that. Maybe if you put one through its eye socket and it went and scrambled its brain a bit, but I don't think it'd have the power to do that either. Anyways, so what I'm trying to say is, basically even with a recurve bow, with a good shot, as long as you were able to penetrate the vitals with a good broadhead, that animal would bleed out. And just to give you a sense of what, how damaging a broadhead would be in comparison to shotgun shell. So that's a broadhead, and it's solid state. I can't remember what these ones are called, but there's some of the best ones that you can get, and it's right on the tip of my tongue. Montec, and very sharp. Something of that width went into an animal, even if it just pierced a vital, that would be enough to bleed it out. You'd have to have good tracking skills in order to be able to track the animal. But compared to a shotgun slug, hang on one sec. It's pretty much the same diameter, I'd say. Try to zoom in there for you. So pretty much the same diameter, actually even a little thicker. So, of course, this is going to have a lot more stopping power than this, but the fact is this will kill a moose. Good luck skinning it yourself. I'm sure it could be done. Never done it. So, hunters weigh in. Anyways, so another benefit to arrows, archery, is that you can make flaming arrows. I know it sounds kind of stupid, but if you ever wanted to, that was a medieval tactic that they used back in the day, and I'm sure it still could be quite effective today under some circumstances. So something to consider. I remember in that movie Troy, they I can't remember if they sent some flammable material downhill. They rolled it into these guys and then they ignited it with arrows, or, you know, something to that effect. I've never really thought about it too much. I just, that was one of the suggestions that somebody had made that I thought was kind of interesting. Another benefit of archery is that it's intuitive, it's fun, it's something that is sort of hardwired into our DNA. There's an anthropological theory that basically it talks about how no matter which human society you look across, they all sort of progress linearly along certain weapons. So first the tribe invents the club, then they invent the cutting device, then they invent the spear, then they invent the sword, then they invent the ranged weapons like bows, slings. There's even spears that get thrown. It's not the Asagi spear, it's another spear. I can't remember what it is. Cold Steel makes one. It's a copy of one that an African tribe uses. Anyways, the idea is that, all humans progress through this natural progression of evolving technologies. I can't remember what the theory is called, but it's very interesting anyways. And of course, after that comes, ranged weapons. First muzzle loaders, then, our more modern guns, and of course artillery and explosives and stuff like that. And then, of course, finally nuclear weapons, and probably not finally, I'm sure they'll think of something else at some point, but I'm rambling. Now, as for the cons of archery, well, one of the main cons is that there's less power, there's less range, there's a steep learning curve, so you can't just pick up a bow and, hit a target even 10 yards away for most people. You could pick this up within 15 minutes. It'd be very hard for you to not hit a target 10 yards away. I mean, that's it. Forget it. You're going to hit it. Probably not going to hit it dead center, or center mass, but you might, you're definitely going to hit it. The other problem is that it won't penetrate any sort of armor. So even a thin piece of wood can stop an arrow. It's weird how it works. When it comes to flesh, the arrow is pretty good at getting itself in there. But when it comes to anything hard like bone or anything like that, it's very hard for the arrow to penetrate that barrier. Another thing that's kind of a drawback to an arrow, and this is debatable depending on what sort of weapon you're using, but reloading. So reloading a crossbow, I know Daryl in The Walking Dead makes it look quite simplistic, and if you notice, you'll very seldom ever see him reloading, because reloading a crossbow is a pain in the ass, and especially if it's enough poundage that you can actually do damage to something, you're either going to have to be very strong, or you're going to need a cocking aid, or you're going to just have to be, used to that motor pattern. Because there's no way if there was, it's definitely not a battle weapon, unless there's 100 of you and that's your sole purpose, like in the medieval era. It's a good hunting weapon, but definitely not a good, in terms of its reloading potential. Now, the recurve bow, there's people on YouTube, who can shoot off 3 arrows in 3 seconds and crazy shit like that. But they're masters. They've been doing that for years on end. You're probably never going to be like that. Now, you probably could pump out an arrow every 5 seconds after getting proficient with it. But whether those shots are going to be accurate or not, highly unlikely. So slow reloading. The other aspect is portability. Now, trying to carry something like this around, is a pain in the butt. So, good luck being, Daryl in the apocalypse. Obviously, they just gave him that weapon so he would have sort of his signature move or whatever, and give the show a bit more variety. But the fact is, it's totally impractical to use in a zombie apocalypse. Of course, that's an entirely fictional scenario that would never happen. But, well, I guess some sort of variation of rabies or something could happen. But anyways, getting off topic again. It's awkwardly shaped, and I guess the last thing is that it's not quite intimidating. Weapons are very intimidating. Just having a gun pointed at you is, even if it's unloaded, even if it's a fake gun, it evokes some really deep-seated sense of fear in a person. And with an arrow, it's not really the same way. I guess it's just that, we haven't really been conditioned with all the media and stuff to see it as threatening as a firearm. So, something to consider if you're talking about tactical applications. Now, one good thing about a recurve bow, it is slightly more portable, because as you can see here, these screws, bolts, mount the limbs to the riser, so that can be taken down. It can be folded up to in a package about that big and that skinny. And actually, I have another bow that a friend had lent me. This is from the Primal Gear thing. I think Dave Canterbury had researched this, and he advocates it. And what it is, it's a folding bow, 60-pound bow. It's about as large as that riser, a little larger, and it's got a bit of weight to it. 60-pound bow, so you could easily, and this isn't a recurve, this is a long bow. Well, it's a short long bow, straight bow, but you could easily, kill any four-legged predator with this, no problem. So that's something to consider also. I'm going to do more talks about this stuff while I have it all here for the short time I do have it. And I have, dabbled in all these different types of archery before, so I speak from limited experience. So that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this video. Sorry it dragged on so long, but I wanted to be thorough. Now, of course, the benefits of the shotgun are numerous, or the firearm are numerous. Particularly with the shotgun, where you have different types of rounds. The shotgun could be taken down and broken down into its component parts also for transport. Although that would reduce the accessibility of it, it's not going to be any more inaccessible than the recurve bow. Now, when push comes to shove, if you only had one choice, obviously you're going to choose the shotgun. It can be used to hunt. It can be used for self-defense. You can hunt waterfowl. You can hunt large game, small game. I mean, you can just do everything with a shotgun. So, number one, clearly shotgun. Now, long-term, grid's never going to come back up, and there's never going to be any more bullets made again. You're going to want to learn how to use that. And like I said before, even for hunting purposes, if you're in a precarious area with people who are not too nice, you don't want to be drawing too much attention to yourself. And when ammunition is limited and you have 50 arrows, that could potentially last you a long time. So let me know what you think about this, and by all means chime in with your critiques or whatever. Please try to keep them respectable, and I'm more than welcome criticism, as long as it's constructive, and as long as we're sort of moving forward in our views and understandings. You've left lots of insightful comments which have drowned out a lot of the trolling that's been going on, so I appreciate that. And anyways, don't forget to comment, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.